I came home to find my entire neighborhood dead. Yellow grass, shut-off water, massive fines. But my backyard was thriving thanks to my grandfather's old well. When I started quietly sharing that water with desperate neighbors, the HOA president came after me. What she didn't know was that the well predated her authority by decades, and neither did I know she'd been stealing public water for her own lawn while the rest of us suffered. This is the story of how I exposed her fraud, helped my community take her down, and learned that sometimes the only way to fight corruption is to stop being quiet. Hello, I'm David Brennan, and this is what happened in Pinewood Estates. I came back to Pinewood Estates on the first Saturday of April, my truck loaded down with gear from 6 months spent in Florida with my sister while she recovered from surgery. My shoulders ached, my mind was fog, and all I wanted was the sound of my own backyard, the cool weight of my own mattress, and maybe a cold bourbon to wash away the travel dust. But the moment I pulled into my driveway on Oakmont Circle, something was wrong. The street felt different, hollowed out. No kids playing basketball at the Hendersons' place, no hum of lawn equipment, no sprinklers dancing across green grass. It was like the whole neighborhood had been vacuumed of life, left to bleach in the sun. I stepped out of my truck, and that's when I really saw it. Every single yard on the block was dead. Not summer brown, not autumn tired, but drained. Yellow-gray, like something had been sucked out of them. Skeletal shrubs, grass that crumbled under your shoe. The whole street looked like it was dying of thirst. Except mine. My yard was still green. Deep, rich green. My buddy Trevor had watered it while I was gone, kept it alive, and looking at it made me feel like I'd done something wrong just by existing here. But something else was off. The hose by my porch was coated in dust, totally untouched for weeks. And when I walked inside, the house smelled like stale air and abandonment, like it was waiting for me to come back and make it real again. I filled a glass from the kitchen tap. Thank God it still worked. Cold and clean, pumping from my private well, installed by my grandfather back in 1958, when this land was nothing but pine forest and dirt roads, long before Pinewood Estates was even a thought in some developer's mind. I drank it down and felt something settle in my chest. But that unease didn't leave. It was still there, sitting in my stomach like I'd walked into a fight that wasn't mine yet. I went out back, and that's when I found it. A cheap plastic sign, the kind you'd see at a construction site, zip-tied to my fence. The letters were huge and bold, screaming in all caps. All exterior water use must comply with Pinewood Estates HOA conservation measures. Violations subject to fines up to $500. At the bottom, someone had scrawled a name in Sharpie. Patricia Downs, HOA president. A chill ran through me. Patricia Downs. I hadn't heard that name in years. I'd known Patricia way back, before everything went sideways. She'd moved to Pinewood about 8 years ago, took a house on Magnolia Drive, started coming to neighborhood meetings. Back then, she was just another face, another resident. But somewhere along the way, something changed. Or maybe it didn't change. Maybe it was always there and I just hadn't been paying attention. Before I left for Florida, Patricia had been on a mission to make Pinewood Estates into some kind of perfect showpiece, banning everything that didn't fit her vision, tacky yard decorations, porch lights that clashed with the neighborhood aesthetic, garbage cans that were visible from the street, mailboxes that weren't the right style. She'd been on the HOA board then, but now, according to that sign, she was president. And judging by the dead yards and the plastic threats, she was running the place like she owned it. That evening, I walked down to the corner and found Trevor checking his mail. He looked exhausted, like he hadn't slept right in weeks. There were lines under his eyes that I didn't remember from before, and his shoulders were hunched like he was carrying weight that shouldn't exist. "Thanks for keeping my yard alive while I was gone," I said, trying to lighten the moment. Trevor gave me a tired smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Yeah, well, I'm not sure how much longer I can do that," he said quietly. "Things have changed, David. Patricia's running things now, and she's not playing around." I raised an eyebrow. What exactly has she done? He looked around like he expected someone to be listening, like there were spies hidden in the hedges. First, she shut down the community fountain, the one we used to have in the park, the one the kids loved. Shut it off completely, said it was a waste of water. Then she cut back the sprinkler schedule. We're allowed to water once a week now. Once a week, David. That's not enough to keep anything alive in this heat. Last month, she claimed there was a break in the main water line, some kind of emergency. She shut off the whole neighborhood's water supply for 9 days. 9 days. People were going crazy. No showers, no drinking water except bottled. She said it was temporary, that they were fixing it, but when they finally turned it back on, she passed this new conservation rule that basically means nobody can use water for anything except essential purposes. Toilets, drinking, that's it. I felt my jaw tighten. That's insane. How is that even legal? Trevor shook his head. No one's really challenging her. She's got people on the board who back her up, and she's handing out fines like they're going out of style. People who've lived here 30 years are getting fined for watering their gardens. Single parents are getting notices because their kids have a kiddie pool in the backyard. He paused, then his voice dropped even lower. Keep that well of yours quiet. If Patricia finds out you're using it, she'll come after you. I can guarantee it. She's already threatened at least 2 people who mentioned having private water sources. I nodded, but my mind was already moving ahead. My grandfather's well was the ace in my hand, the thing that could keep me above the waterline while Patricia played dictator. It was legal. Dug in 1958, predating the HOA by decades, tested every 5 years, always clean and safe. The whole setup was registered with the county, above board, untouchable by Patricia and her rules. I wasn't about to let anyone dictate how I used my own property, especially not her. That night, I sat in my backyard with a beer, listening to the dead quiet of the neighborhood, and I realized something. This wasn't just about water. This was about control. And Patricia wasn't going to stop unless someone made her. The next morning, I was up before dawn. Old Army habits never really leave you. You spend 23 years serving, and even when you're out, your body remembers the discipline. I was up at 5:30 a.m., coffee in hand, sitting on my back porch and watching the neighborhood slowly wake up. The street was quiet, empty, like a ghost town waiting for something to happen. At 8 a.m. sharp, Trevor pulled up in his van. His daughter Maya was in the front seat, half asleep but grinning when she saw me waving from the porch. I led them around back, past the tool shed, through the overgrown jasmine that my grandfather planted decades ago. The well cover was hidden there, covered in rust and vines, looking like something from another era. I flipped it open, dropped the hose, and hit the pump. The thing came to life with this beautiful, mechanical song. Water, cold and clear and real, started flowing into the containers Trevor had brought. His eyes got wide, like I'd just handed him something precious. Something irreplaceable. David, he whispered, this could save the whole neighborhood. Not the whole neighborhood, I said, but enough to keep people sane, enough to keep kids from going thirsty. That was all I wanted. I wasn't looking for a revolution. I just didn't want to watch my community crumble while Patricia sipped iced tea on her perfect lawn. But word travels fast in a neighborhood. By noon, people started showing up. At first, it was just a few, then more. They came with buckets and coolers and old milk jugs and Tupperware containers. They asked quietly if it was okay. I said the same thing to each one. Take what you need, but keep it quiet. Don't advertise it. Don't post about it online. Just take care of your family and your neighbors, and don't draw attention. Most of them understood. They were desperate people trying to keep their lives together while Patricia played her power games. But Patricia had senses like a predator. She could smell desperation and defiance from miles away, and she didn't like it. That afternoon, an email went out from the Pinewood Estates HOA office. Mandatory water conservation briefing. Tuesday evening, 6 p.m. at the clubhouse. Unauthorized water use is a violation of HOA Code 3.4 and will result in fines and possible legal action. All caps. Like she was yelling through the screen at all of us. I forwarded the email to my old friend Nathan, a retired civil engineer who'd done consulting work for the county. Nathan owed me a favor from years back. and I decided to call it in. "Hey," I texted him, attached a photo of Patricia's conservation notice. "Is this stuff legal? What can an HOA actually do?" His response came back within an hour. "She's full of it. An HOA can't just cut off municipal water service. That requires city permits and approval. What she's doing sounds like fraud. Send me the documentation. I'll look into it." The clubhouse meeting on Tuesday evening was tense. The room was packed with neighbors, maybe 90 people, and the air felt thick with anger and fear. People stood with their arms crossed, shoulders hunched, like they were expecting a bomb to drop. Patricia came in wearing a pressed blazer and heels, holding a wireless microphone like she was about to give a TED Talk. She'd always been polished, always looked like money, but now there was something else, something cold and controlled. She started by projecting a photo on the big screen. It was a water pipe, rusty and damaged. "This," she said, her voice dripping with fake concern, "is why we've had to take emergency measures. The main water line has been compromised. It's a safety issue. We can't have contaminants in our system. It's for everyone's protection." I couldn't help myself. I raised my hand. Patricia's eyes flicked toward me. "David." She said it like a greeting and a warning at the same time. "That's funny," I said, standing up, "because my private well has been running fine the entire time. It's older than that pipe. It predates this HOA by decades. So if there's really an emergency, how is my water clean?" Patricia's smile twitched. "Just a little, but I saw it. Mr. Brennan," she said, and her voice had gone sharp as a blade. "Private wells are not permitted under HOA Code 3.2. Pre-existing grandfathered wells are exempt from that code. The code clearly states that new wells installed after 1970 require HOA approval. Mine was installed in 1958. I have the paperwork. It predates your HOA by more than 15 years, so technically, you have no authority over it." The room stirred. I could feel people leaning forward, listening, understanding that something was shifting. Patricia's face went tight, and she forced a smile that looked like it hurt. "This isn't a debate," she said. But she was wrong. It was now. Everything had changed. Over the next week, notices started appearing. Taped to mailboxes, zip-tied to fences, cease unauthorized water use or face fines of up to $500 per incident. Some letters were specifically addressed to me. Others were generic, sent to the whole neighborhood. No signatures, just the HOA logo. Like that made it the law. I started documenting everything. I bagged the notices, dated them, stored them in a folder. Evidence. I set up security cameras around my house, watching the perimeter, recording everything. Not because I was worried about thieves, but because I wanted proof of what was coming. The HOA started sending inspectors. I'd watch them on the cameras, creeping through yards, snapping photos, writing violations for the most absurd things. A faded shutter, an unapproved flower pot, a mailbox that was 2 inches too tall. The fines piled up. By Friday, I'd counted 17 different violations issued to my neighbors in just 4 days. That's when I really went to work. I got my hands on the complete HOA bylaws, a dense mess of contradictions and loopholes, written in language designed to confuse regular people. But I had time, I had patience, and I had a military background that trained me to read dense documentation. I found what I was looking for in Section 5.1. Private wells installed prior to the establishment of Pinewood Estates HOA are exempt from HOA jurisdiction and control. Patricia either didn't know this was in there, or she did know and simply didn't care. Either way, she was playing a losing game, and I was starting to understand the rules better than she did. I spent that weekend pulling together documentation, property records, inspection reports, historical deeds, county permits, maps showing the age of my well in relation to the establishment of the HOA. By Sunday evening, I had a binder full of proof that everything Patricia was doing was based on a lie, or at least on a very selective reading of the rules that benefited her and hurt everyone else. Then Patricia crossed a line that changed everything. On Thursday night, I was in my backyard working on some repairs to the fence when Shadow, my German Shepherd, started growling. Not a normal bark, a low, dangerous sound that meant something was wrong. I turned and saw two figures near my shed, moving slowly, carefully, like they didn't want to be seen. One of them had a phone light, and it was aimed directly at my well. I grabbed my flashlight and turned it on them. Two guys, dressed in dark clothes, bolted the second the light hit them. I got a partial plate number on their truck as they sped away. The next morning, I filed a trespassing report with the sheriff's department. I sent the footage to Nathan, and I decided it was time to stop being quiet. I printed up flyers. Simple. Direct. Water rights meeting. My porch. Saturday, 6 p.m. Bring your HOA violation letters. Bring your guts. Bring your questions. No corporate language. No politics. Just a direct call to action. I didn't post them online. Patricia had eyes on social media. Instead, I walked the neighborhood and slipped them under doors, one by one, personally. By Saturday evening, a dozen neighbors had shown up. Sarah, a single mother from 2 streets over, brought a folder thick with violation notices. Her crime? Her kids had a swing set in the backyard. Rachel and Marcus, who'd been living on Maple Avenue for 23 years, brought notices for non-compliant landscaping. Tom, who'd worked in county water management for 40 years before retiring, brought his expertise and his anger. We stood in my backyard, under the old oak tree, and I laid it all out. I showed them my grandfather's property map, the original deed from 1958, the county registration documents. This well is here, I said, pointing to the marked location. It's legal, it's documented, it's mine, and it predates the HOA by more than 15 years. If Patricia can't control me, if her legal authority doesn't extend to me, then she can't actually enforce her conservation orders on anyone. Because the whole thing is built on a lie. A neighborhood can't survive when the people in charge are corrupt. Sarah looked at me with tears in her eyes. My kids have been going without showers, with bottled water only, while she, Patricia, drove past my house yesterday in her Range Rover, and I could see her lawn. Green. Lush. Her fountain was running. I saw it from the street. The same fountain she shut down for the rest of us. The spark was catching now. You could feel it in the air, like dry grass catching fire, spreading fast and hot and real. Patricia found out about the meeting. Of course she did. And on Monday morning I found a new notice on my windshield. Unauthorized assembly. Cease and desist or face security response and legal action. Security response. Like she was the government. Like she had power beyond what she actually had. I laughed. I actually laughed out loud. She was unraveling. And more importantly, she was making mistakes. That same day, I called Nathan back. I need you to dig deeper, I said. How did she shut down the water? What authority did she use? Nathan called me back within 2 hours, and his voice was different. Angry, serious. David, I've been talking to some people in the city water department. The main water line shutdown, the emergency she declared, it never happened. There was no break. No contamination. But Patricia did file paperwork claiming there was an emergency, and she used that claim to get temporary authority over the neighborhood's water distribution. What she did next is what's illegal. She routed the main water line through a secondary control point and diverted a portion of it to her own property. The part that's supposed to go to the whole neighborhood. She's been stealing public water while starving the rest of you. I felt something cold settle in my chest. I wasn't shocked, but hearing it confirmed was different. I sent Nathan the photos that Jake had taken of Patricia's property, her lawn, her fountain, all running while the neighborhood suffered, all during the period she claimed there was an emergency shutdown. Timestamps on everything. Nathan said he'd file a formal complaint with the city. On Wednesday, the city sent an inspector, Walter Chen, a no-nonsense guy with 30 years of experience. He tested my well. Cleaner than most municipal water lines, he said, nodding. You're golden here. You could supply drinking water to a small town with this setup. Then I showed him the photos of Patricia's fountain, her green lawn, the water line diversion. I watched his face change. This isn't a conservation order, he said quietly. This is a heist. He made some calls right there in my backyard. By Friday, the city had launched an investigation. Fraud, utility tampering, endangerment. That's what they were looking at. Emergency hearing scheduled for the following Thursday. The hearing took place in room 3B at City Hall. The room was packed. 95 people from Pinewood Estates showed up. Neighbors who'd been silenced, kids who'd gone thirsty, people who'd been fined for living their lives. Patricia sat at the front table with 3 board members, looking like they'd been shocked with a cattle prod. The commissioner, Ellen Reed, didn't waste time. She was sharp, direct, no nonsense. "Miss Marshall," she said, her voice cutting through the room like a knife. "You issued emergency conservation orders to the entire neighborhood, shut off their water supply for extended periods. Yet your own property has continued to receive water. Can you explain this?" Patricia started stammering about emergency measures and HOA authority, about how she was trying to protect the community, how it was temporary, how she never meant any harm. But her words fell flat. They echoed in the room and dissolved. I stood up, binder in hand, my voice steady and calm. "I've lived in this community for 19 years, I said. "I served in the Army for 23 years before that. I know what it means to follow orders. I know what it means to be part of a structure that's supposed to protect people. But what happened here isn't protection." Patricia turned our HOA into a weapon. She issued fines for curtains that didn't match her aesthetic. She threatened kids with violations for having swing sets. She cut off water to an entire neighborhood while secretly diverting it to her own property. And when someone tried to help, when someone offered water to their suffering neighbors, she tried to have them arrested. I dropped the binder on the table. It was heavy with documentation, with notices, with photos, with neighbor testimony. The room went silent. Walter, the city inspector, stood and presented his findings. Test results showing contamination wasn't the issue. Waterline analysis showing the diversion. Records from the city showing Patricia had no legal authority to shut down municipal water. Emails where she'd explicitly claimed an emergency that never existed. By the time he finished, Patricia looked like she'd been hollowed out. At 10:47 a.m., Commissioner Reed slammed her gavel. "The Pinewood Estates HOA is hereby suspended pending a full investigation. Patricia Marshall is removed from her position as president, effective immediately. All fines issued within the past 6 months are voided. All properties will receive full water service restoration within 48 hours." The room erupted. Not in chaos, but in relief. In the sound of people finally being heard. Patricia walked out of that hearing room with her head held high, but I saw her hands shaking. Her empire had been dust. The board members followed her out, looking like they'd been kicked off a cliff. Outside, I found Sarah sitting on the courthouse steps, crying. Not sad crying, relieved crying. "My kids can shower again," she said. "I can water my garden. We can breathe." Over the next week, the water came back on. Real water. Unlimited water. The yellow yard slowly turned green again. Kids rode bikes on the streets. Sprinklers danced across lawns. It was like watching the neighborhood wake up after a long nightmare. People started making plans. Someone proposed a community garden. Someone else suggested a tool-sharing shed. Trevor and Sarah got together to organize regular neighborhood meetings, real meetings, where people could have a say in how things ran. Sarah ran for HOA president, and she won without even really campaigning, because people were tired of corruption. They wanted someone who understood what it meant to actually care about a community. Patricia sold her house a month later. The real estate agent told Trevor that she'd taken a job at some other HOA at a gated condo community across the state. She didn't say goodbye, didn't reach out to anyone. Just packed up and left like she'd never really been here at all. But one day, about 2 months after she left, I found an envelope in my mailbox. No postage, no address, just my name and handwriting I recognized. I opened it. Inside was a single page, handwritten in blue ink. "Mike." I read, then stopped. That wasn't right. The letter was addressed to Mike, but my name is David. I read the rest. Anyway. "Mike, I lost sight of what community means. I'm sorry." I tucked it away. Not because I was forgiving her, not because her apology meant anything, but as a reminder, power is only real if people believe in it. And Willow Creek stopped believing. Now it's different. We got block parties, a tool-sharing shed, even a little free library. Sophie, Trevor's daughter, painted herself. My well's still there, pumping strong, a quiet middle finger to anyone who thinks they can own us. But it wasn't just mine. It was Trevor. It was Sarah. It was every single neighbor who stood up and said no. We didn't just turn the water back on. We turned ourselves back on. But here's the thing about standing up to corruption. It doesn't always feel heroic when you're doing it. Sometimes it feels like you're just trying to survive, trying to help your neighbors survive. You don't think about the bigger picture. You just think about the immediate problem. My neighbor's kids need water. My friend's lawn is dead. My community is suffering under the thumb of someone who shouldn't have power. And you act. You do what you can. You share what you have. You document the lies. You find the evidence. You stand up in a hearing room and speak the truth. And sometimes, if you're lucky, the people listening are ready to hear it. Now I think about Patricia sometimes. Not with anger, with something more like sadness. She had everything. She had a community that would have supported her. She had authority that was legitimate. And she threw it away because she confused power with control. She thought she could legislate people into submission. She thought she could starve a neighborhood into compliance. She didn't understand that community isn't something you create through force. It's something you nurture through trust, through fairness, through actually caring about the people around you. I don't know if she learned that lesson. Her letter suggests maybe she did, but I'll never know for sure. What I do know is that my neighborhood learned it. We learned it the hard way, and I think we're better for it. The well still runs. I maintain it myself, keep it clean, test it regularly, but I don't guard it anymore. People still come by sometimes and fill up jugs. Unofficial. Not on any kind of schedule. Just neighbors helping neighbors. And I let them, because that's what a real community does. So, what do you think about what happened in Pinewood Estates? When's the last time you saw someone abuse power like that? Have you ever had to stand up to corruption in your own community? Drop a comment below and share your story. Let's keep this conversation flowing, because community is about more than just where we live. It's about standing together.